Guys, welcome to another episode of Rennch. On today's show, we are going to work on the Porsche 912E Backdate and start the process of replacing the front latch panel so we can put a nice long hood on this bad boy. So if you guys are unfamiliar with the process of backdating a later model or G-body Porsche 911, one of the main things you have to do is replace the front latch panel because the long hood 911s, i.e. 1964 through 1973, have indeed a longer hood. So you actually have to replace the front latch panel. To do that, I've got to first uncover all of these spot welds and then drill all of them out so I can get to the latch panel from the inside. Then I have a replacement one from Dansk, and I will hopefully get that in place, start aligning it with a hood, and then be able to tack it in. So this is the victim. It's a 1976 Porsche 912E, and you can see I've got to replace this entire latch panel here. So I'm going to remove the fenders you may or may not have seen me struggle with in the last episode. So I'm going to pop these fenders off. They're actually just held on by one single bolt. I'll put them somewhere. I'm going to remove the hood and then begin the process of grinding all of this away so I can see where the spot welds are. All right, now that the paint and all this thick undercoating is off, you can see these are all the spot welds. You got to drill all of these things out. There's a million different ways to do it. You can use a regular drill bit, a step drill bit. I like to use this thing. This is a spot weld cutter kit I got on Amazon a couple years ago. Basically, it's like a little mini hole saw. It's got a little pilot guide that is spring loaded. So what you do is basically just put it on the edge here of the spot weld and literally drill it out until it releases. So basically it drills around the outside of the metal until you get to the metal on the inside. I'm just gonna kind of, again, put my headphones on, just start cranking away at this thing. It'll probably take an hour of just spot weld drilling just to get the majority of it out. At that point, I'll pull out the other panel and kind of see if I need to find any other spots to drill out and that kind of thing. So let's get into it. So if you've never done what I'm doing now, which is trying to remove a main panel of the car, but not destroy the panels that are attached to it, drilling out spot welds and that kind of thing, it can feel a little messy where things are sort of all over the place and you're like, am I making any progress? You gotta trust the process and be patient. One thing I'm doing on this one, I've shifted my plan since I started, and let me show you guys what I'm doing now. So two things. Number one, I'm finding that a traditional drill bit works better for me for this, and it works okay because it's okay if I go all the way through both panels, because I can actually use the holes in this panel to weld on to the new panel that I'm putting on. So that actually works out just fine. The other thing I'm doing is I've actually cut the panel away with an angle grinder with a cutting wheel, and I'm gonna get the bulk of this thing out of the way so that when I need to take the spot welds out, I can just sort of get underneath and get in with a pry bar and pull them off to clean them all up. The big thing right now is that this section down here, sort of 3/4 of the way down, there's like triple spot welds all the way down. There's probably 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's probably 50 or 60 just in that one panel. And then there's a bottom lip as well. Again, patience, just stick with it. It takes a minute. Okay, next morning, and I'm gonna get back at this thing. I'm gonna knock this bad boy off. It is in the way. You can see I've started to grind away and start getting rid of the original sheet metal on this side, a little bit over here. I've got to actually get underneath and drill out all the spot welds because this panel is holding on the bottom side of the front latch panel. So I've got to get under here and drill all those out and then basically work this outer piece of metal off, at which point I can use a hammer and dolly, straighten all this stuff out, and then get the new panel in. All right, guys, here we are. So what I did just at the end there is I had to notch out this section down here for the latch panel, and that allowed it to kind of fit in. The other part, if you happen to ever have to do this, is you really have to move one of these sides out of the way because there's literally no way. It's sort of on the inside and the outside. So I'm gonna get it all kind of buttoned up, throw a couple of Tech screws on the bottom here, and then I guess I'll throw the fenders back on just for a reference. Then I have to steal the hood from the Gray Ghost to make sure that part is all dialed, but really excited, man. I think it came out great. I'm very pleased. Check that out. That is a fully backdated front end. It looks dope. I love it. One of the great things about working with steel, obviously, is that everything fits amazingly. It's much easier to manipulate than fiberglass. It just fits well. So the next thing I'll do, at least in terms of the front end, is get the hood fit up, make sure that everything's where it's supposed to be. It'll latch correctly. At that point, I can start tacking this thing together and weld it in, and then it'll be permanent. Then we can just adjust the fenders, which are already fitting spectacularly well. You know, once I tighten them down correctly, it's just going to be a perfect little front end. So I'm stoked. I think it's a little bonus now. Let's cut into some factory Porsche sheet metal. I think that sounds like a great idea. Let's get these flares tacked on and give this thing kind of the hips that it's going to have when it's done. What do you think? So what you guys just saw me do is roughly fit the flare. So I clamp it in a couple spots. I roughly fit it. I do an outline of it. And then I cut like an inch inside the outline. So I cut away a lot of the excess metal. It's like, you know, pretty much a whole narrow flare here. And then I lay this thing over and just put some tech screws in. And that just holds it for now. It is not in its exact position at all yet, but this is just a rough cut. This one I'm actually gonna try to TIG weld. So of course, if it doesn't work out, I can always MIG it, but I'm gonna try to hone my TIG weld technique. But anyway, it's nice to see this thing has some hips though, doesn't it? I'm gonna do the same process on the other side. So stay tuned, be right back. Okay, so here we are, dudes. And I am feeling like this was a very productive day of working on cars. We got some hips. We got a nice rounded front end. I've got nothing to mount the rear bumper to yet, so I can't do that. I'll get everything all fitted up, and then it'll be welding day and grinding day. But this thing's starting to look awesome. Ben approved. What do you think, pal? Pretty good looking flares, yo. Yeah. There you go. Stretch it out for good flares. Oh, good flares. That was great. I'm stoked. I'm chuffed, as you Brits say. You guys say chuffed, don't you? Chuffed? Anyway, soon we'll be into welding day. I first need to see if I can fit up the rear bumper the way it needs to be fit. Haven't even attempted that yet because I have to drill out some spot welds where the reflector panel was. I got to get the hood fit up, but otherwise that is bueno. And once the backdate's done, I can start working on the engine swap. So, stoked. This was like really productive 2 or 3 days of working on a car. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you guys are doing a backdate like this, and you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me on Instagram. That's Rennch, of course, or right here in the comments. You guys keep on rocking. We'll see you next time.